Welcome back to History's Hidden Weird, the show that reminds you history isn't just what happened, it's also what people thought happened. I'm your host, Quinn Strange. And today's story is about a lie. But not just any lie, a beautifully crafted, absurdly detailed, totally fake news story that shook New York City in 1844. It was about a group of men who allegedly crossed the Atlantic Ocean in a balloon in 3 days in 1844. And people believed it. The man behind the hoax? None other than the master of the macabre himself, Edgar Allan Poe. Let's unravel the literary prank that fooled the nation and explore what it says about truth, media, and the weird joy of being duped. To understand this hoax, we have to go back, way back, to the mid-1800s. America in the 1840s was a place buzzing with invention. Telegraph wires were going up. Steamships were racing across the oceans. Railroads were multiplying like rabbits. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing. People believed anything might be possible, especially if it involved science, spectacle, or progress. And then, there was the press. Newspapers were competitive, fast, and often reckless. The line between journalism and sensational fiction? Blurry at best. Enter the New York Sun, a paper with a taste for the theatrical. This was the same publication that, just a few years earlier, published the infamous Great Moon Hoax, a series of articles claiming that astronomers had discovered unicorns and bat people living on the moon. So when the Sun published a front-page story on April 13, 1844, claiming that a balloon had just crossed the Atlantic, people were primed to believe it. The story was titled, "Astounding News. The Atlantic Crossed in 3 days." According to the article, 8 men had boarded a revolutionary hot air balloon in England, named Victoria, and flown all the way to Charleston, South Carolina in just 75 hours. It described the balloon in meticulous detail. Silk panels, steam-powered propellers, a rudder system, a wicker cabin with food storage and instruments. It even cited the names of the passengers, British scientists, engineers, and even a journalist. There were quotes, dialogue, descriptions of sea spray, mid-air mishaps, and their eventual landing in the American South. It was thrilling. It was groundbreaking. It was completely fake. But the public? They ate it up. Crowds gathered outside the Sun's offices. Competing newspapers rushed to confirm the story. People imagined a new future, one where the ocean was no longer a barrier, but just another skyway. And then, within 2 days, it all fell apart. The man behind the hoax was none other than Edgar Allan Poe. Yes, the same Poe who wrote The Raven, The Telltale Heart, and The Fall of the House of Usher. Poe had a love-hate relationship with journalism. He worked as an editor, critic, and contributor at various papers, but he was constantly broke, often bitter, and always looking for ways to stir the pot. He later admitted he wrote the balloon hoax as a prank, a literary stunt, meant to entertain but also to test the public's willingness to believe. And he was so proud of how convincing it was. In fact, he had originally written the story for a rival magazine, but they delayed publishing. So Poe sold it to the Sun, and the editors ran it as fact. Whether they knew it was fake is still debated. But Poe? He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted people to question the authority of the press, and maybe, to appreciate the power of storytelling, even when it blurs the line between fact and fiction. Now, how did people fall for this? Well, a few reasons. 1. Timing. Transatlantic travel was the holy grail of innovation. Steamships had cut the journey to 2 weeks. A 3-day balloon crossing? Believable, if just barely. 2. Details. Poe filled the article with technical jargon, names of fictional British scientists, and realistic dialogue. It sounded like reporting. 3. Credibility. The Sun had a huge readership, and newspapers back then didn't always check their facts, especially if it meant selling papers. 4. Hope. People wanted to believe. They wanted progress. They wanted to live in a world where balloons could fly across oceans. This was more than just a prank, it was a psychological study in real time. Poe later admitted the hoax in a letter and even republished the article in his collected works, under the title The Balloon Hoax. He wasn't exactly remorseful. In fact, he seemed delighted by how well it worked. And why not? It was performance art. It was science fiction disguised as front-page news. It also predated modern discussions about fake news, media literacy, and the ethics of journalism by well over a century. And here's the kicker, transatlantic flight did happen. Just not until 1919. And even then, it was in a plane, not a balloon. Poe's hoax was pure fiction, but it hinted at a future that wasn't entirely impossible. Edgar Allan Poe's balloon hoax reminds us that truth and fiction are often separated by a very thin, and sometimes invisible, line. It also reminds us that people will always want to believe in wonders, in miracles, and flights across impossible distances. Even if, every now and then, someone has to float a lie to make us dream. Thanks for listening to History's Hidden Weird. If you enjoyed today's tale of airborne lies and literary mischief, subscribe and leave a review. It helps other curious minds find us. Next time, we'll dig up another strange artifact from the dusty corners of history. This has been History's Hidden Weird. I'm Quinn Strange. Thanks for listening. Stay curious. Stay kind. Stay wonderfully weird.